She stood in the corner office everyone envied, rain streaking down the glass like the tears she refused to cry. Success, power, respect, and a loneliness so heavy it crushed her chest every night. Then she whispered the truth she'd buried for years. No one wants to date me. Her new project director, a widowed single father fighting his own demons, froze. What happened next shattered every rule between boss and employee. She lifted her shirt, revealing the scar that stole her confidence, her fertility, her faith that anyone could love her completely. His response changed everything. This is not just a love story. This is about two broken people choosing courage over safety, building family from fragments and proving that our scars don't disqualify us from happiness. Stay until the end. You'll feel this one. Drop a like comment where you're watching from and let's begin. But to understand how we got to that moment, you need to go back 3 months. Back to when Claire Bennett was still pretending she had it all figured out. 3 months earlier, Denver was drowning in one of those late spring mornings where the sky couldn't decide between rain and sunshine. Claire's corner office on the 16th floor gave her a view most people would kill for. Downtown sprawled below like a chessboard she'd already mastered. The mountains in the distance looked painted on unreal, untouchable. She stood at the window with her second coffee of the morning, scrolling through her tablet. The startup she'd built from nothing now employed 237 people. Last quarter's revenue had investors calling her a unicorn whisperer. Her face had been on the cover of 3 business magazines in 6 months, and she ate lunch alone at her desk every single day. Her calendar pinged. Another meeting in 5 minutes. Claire drained her coffee, smoothed her blazer, and checked her reflection in the dark screen of her monitor. Hair perfect. Makeup flawless. Smile practiced and ready. Nobody saw the way her hands shook when she was alone. The morning blurred through back-to-back meetings, product roadmap review, investor update call, budget allocation with the CFO. Claire moved through them like a machine designed for efficiency, her mind 3 steps ahead of every conversation. She anticipated objections before they were voiced, diffused tension with precision, and closed every discussion with clear action items. At 12:15, her assistant knocked softly. "Lunch is here. Just leave it on the side table. Thank you." The door clicked shut. Claire glanced at the salad she'd ordered, the same salad she ordered every Tuesday, and kept working. Through the glass walls of her office, she could see clusters of employees heading out together, laughing about something she wasn't part of. She told herself she preferred it this way. Leaders needed distance. Respect required boundaries. The loneliness was just the cost of ambition. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dana Pierce, her HR director and the closest thing Claire had to a friend in this building. "Drink tonight, you look like you need one." Claire typed back, "Rain check, buried in Q3 planning." Dana's response came immediately. "That's what you said last week, and the week before." Claire set the phone face down and returned to her spreadsheets. At 2:30, her calendar reminded her about the final interview for the project director role. She'd been searching for 3 months. The position required someone who could manage high-stakes client relationships, lead cross-functional teams, and operate independently under pressure. 17 candidates had walked through her door. None of them had the right combination of competence and emotional intelligence. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ryan Carter is here for his 2:30. Send him in." The man who entered was not what Claire expected. Mid-30s, tall, but not imposing, with the kind of face that looked like it smiled easily even though it wasn't smiling now. His suit fit well, but his tie was slightly crooked. He carried a worn leather portfolio, and there was something about the way he moved, careful and deliberate, like someone who'd learned not to take up too much space. Claire stood extending her hand. "Ryan Carter, I've reviewed your materials. Impressive track record." His handshake was firm but brief. "Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Bennett." "Claire is fine. Please sit." They settled into the chairs by her meeting table. Claire opened his file, though she'd already memorized every line. "You spent 6 years at Morrison Tech, climbed to senior director, then left 18 months ago. You've been freelancing since." "Why?" Ryan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Personal circumstances required more flexibility." Claire waited. Most candidates rushed to fill silence. Ryan didn't. "I have an 8-year-old daughter. After my wife passed, I needed to be more present." The words were delivered without drama, just facts laid bare. But Claire caught the way his fingers pressed against the armrest, the slight pause before the word passed. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you." Claire shifted gears, pulling him into a hypothetical client crisis scenario. Ryan's responses were thoughtful, strategic, and refreshingly honest. When he didn't know something, he said so and explained how he'd find the answer. When Claire pushed back on his approach, he defended his reasoning without getting defensive. 40 minutes passed like 10. Claire closed the file and leaned back. "You're overqualified for this role." Ryan met her eyes. "Maybe. But I'm not looking for a title. I'm looking for stability, for work that matters, and for a team I can actually help." Something about the way he said it, no polish, no performance, just truth, made Claire's chest tighten. "The hours can be unpredictable. Travel comes up. Deadlines don't care about personal schedules." "I understand. I have support systems in place. My daughter comes first, but I won't let the team down." Claire studied him for a long moment. There was something steady about Ryan Carter, something that made her want to trust him, even though trust didn't come easily anymore. "I'll be in touch by end of week." Ryan stood extending his hand again. "I appreciate your time." After he left, Claire sat in the quiet of her office and realized she'd already made the decision. 2 days later, Ryan accepted the offer. His start date was set for the following Monday. Dana appeared in Claire's doorway that Friday afternoon, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. "You hired the widowed single dad." Claire didn't look up from her laptop. "I hired the most qualified candidate." "Mm-hmm." Dana dropped into the chair across from Claire's desk. "And it has nothing to do with the fact that he's the first person you've interviewed who didn't try to impress you with buzzwords. He had the strongest strategic thinking. He also has kind eyes, and you noticed." Claire's fingers paused over her keyboard. "I noticed he can do the job." Dana's expression softened. "I'm not judging. I'm just saying it's okay to acknowledge when someone makes an impression." Claire finally looked up, her voice quieter than she intended. "It doesn't matter. He reports to me. That's the only relationship that's relevant." Dana held her gaze for a beat too long, then stood. "If you say so, but Claire, you're allowed to be human, even here." After Dana left, Claire returned to her work. But Dana's words lingered like smoke she couldn't quite clear. Ryan's first week was a controlled disaster. Not because of him, because of everything else. A major client threatened to pull their contract over a missed deliverable. The engineering team discovered a critical bug 2 days before a product launch. And Ryan arrived every morning looking like he'd already fought 3 battles before 9 a.m. On Wednesday, Claire was in the conference room reviewing crisis protocols with her leadership team when Ryan slipped in late, slightly breathless, his hair still damp. "Apologies. Traffic on I-25 was brutal." Someone muttered under their breath, too quiet for Ryan to hear, but loud enough for Claire to catch. "Single dad. Wife died, probably overslept dealing with the kid." Claire's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Ryan took his seat and immediately contributed a solution to the client issue that was so elegantly simple Everyone else looked embarrassed for not thinking of it first. After the meeting, Claire caught him in the hallway. That was good work in there. Ryan looked surprised, like praise wasn't something he expected. Just trying to pull my weight. You're doing more than that. Something flickered across his face. Gratitude mixed with exhaustion, and Claire suddenly understood that this job wasn't just about stability for Ryan. It was about proving he could still function, still contribute, still be more than just a grieving single father. She recognized it because she'd spent 2 years doing the same thing after her diagnosis. Over the next few weeks, Claire found herself noticing Ryan in ways that had nothing to do with his job performance. The way he listened in meetings really listened, instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. The way he diffused tension with quiet humor instead of dominance. The way he stayed late not to impress anyone, but because he genuinely cared about getting things right. She also noticed the coffee stain on his collar one Tuesday. The dark circles that never quite faded. The way his phone was always face up on his desk, like he was waiting for an emergency call. The protein bars he ate at his desk instead of joining the team for lunch. One Thursday afternoon, Claire was walking past the break room when she heard Ryan on the phone, his voice low and strained. "I know, Mia. I'm sorry. I'll be there as soon as I can. Did Mrs. Chen say she can stay until 6? Okay. Okay, baby. I love you. I'll bring pizza." When he emerged, his expression was carefully blank, but Claire saw the way his shoulders sagged. She didn't say anything. What was there to say? She understood the weight of responsibilities that didn't pause just because you had a job to do. That night, long after everyone else had gone home, Claire stood at her window watching the city lights blur together. Her phone sat silent on her desk. No texts from friends asking about her day. No calls from family checking in. Just the hum of the empty building and the weight of another evening stretching ahead. She pulled up her dating app, the one she'd downloaded 6 months ago, in a moment of optimism. 3 matches. 2 had ghosted after the first message. The third had disappeared when she mentioned her company. Claire deleted the app and poured herself into work instead. Work didn't ask questions. Work didn't need to know about scars or surgeries or the fear that woke her at 3 a.m., wondering if the cancer would come back. Work was safe. The following Monday, Dana cornered her again. "Drinks, tonight, non-negotiable." Claire started to protest, but Dana cut her off. "I've watched you eat lunch alone for 3 weeks straight. You leave after everyone else. You arrive before everyone else. And you look at your phone like it personally offended you. So we're going to that wine bar on Larimer, and you're going to tell me what's actually going on." They ended up at a corner table with a bottle of Pinot Noir between them. Dana waited exactly 1 glass before cutting to the point. "Talk to me." Claire swirled her wine, watching the liquid catch the light. "There's nothing to talk about. You're a brilliant CEO and a terrible liar. Try again." Claire's laugh was sharp. "I'm fine. The company's growing, revenue's up, everything's on track. I'm not asking about the company. I'm asking about you." The question landed heavier than it should have. Claire set down her glass, her throat suddenly tight. "What do you want me to say, Dana? That I'm lonely? That I go home to an empty apartment and wonder what the point is of building all this if there's no one to share it with?" Dana's expression softened. "Yeah, that's exactly what I want you to say, because pretending you're fine is slowly killing you." Claire's eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears fall. "I had cancer. I survived. I should be grateful." You can be grateful and lonely at the same time. Men don't want complicated. They want easy. And I'm the opposite of easy. Dana reached across the table, squeezing Claire's hand. "The right person won't see you as complicated. They'll see you as real." Claire pulled her hand back gently, her smile not reaching her eyes. That's a nice thought, but I've learned not to count on nice thoughts. They finished the bottle in quieter conversation, Dana updating her on office gossip, Claire pretending the knot in her chest had loosened even slightly. When Claire got home that night, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror and lifted her shirt. The scar stared back angry and permanent. She traced it with one finger, remembering the surgeon's voice. "We got it all, you're cancer-free." But free felt like the wrong word. Free would mean not waking up terrified. Free would mean trusting her body again. Free would mean believing someone could look at this and not flinch. Claire dropped her shirt and turned off the light. The next morning she arrived at the office before sunrise. Ryan was already there, working in the small conference room with papers spread across the table and his laptop glowing in the dim light. Claire paused in the doorway. "You're here early." Ryan looked up, and for just a second she saw her own exhaustion reflected back. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd be productive instead." Claire understood that more than he knew. How many nights had she done the same thing? Turned insomnia into spreadsheets, anxiety into action items. "Coffee," she offered. Ryan's smile was small but genuine. "That would be great." They stood in the break room while the machine sputtered and hissed, neither of them speaking, both of them too tired to pretend this was normal. Ryan finally broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" Claire handed him a mug. "Sure. Does it get easier? Running everything, being responsible for everyone, and still having a life outside these walls?" Claire cradled her own coffee, the warmth seeping into her palms. "I don't know. I haven't figured out the life outside these walls part yet." Ryan's eyes met hers and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or just the recognition that they were both running on empty and pretending otherwise. "Well," Ryan said quietly, "if you figure it out, let me know." Claire's lips curved into something almost like a real smile. "Deal." They returned to their separate spaces, but something had shifted. A crack in the professional distance. A glimpse of the truth they were both carrying. And neither of them realized yet just how dangerous that truth would become. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost sustainable. Claire stopped eating lunch alone, quite as often occasionally joining leadership meetings in the break room, where Ryan's quiet presence had become part of the furniture. He never dominated conversations, but when he spoke, people listened. There was something about the way he communicated, clear and thoughtful, that made even mundane updates feel like they mattered. Claire told herself she wasn't paying special attention. She told herself Ryan was just another talented employee, that her awareness of when he arrived and when he left was simply good management. She told herself the slight disappointment she felt on mornings when his desk was empty meant nothing beyond concern for project timelines. She was an excellent liar, except to herself, at 3 a.m. The Henderson account had become their shared obsession. A Fortune 500 company considering a massive platform migration, the kind of deal that could define the company's entire year. Claire had assigned Ryan as lead, and he'd thrown himself into it with an intensity that reminded her of herself before she'd learned to hide behind composure. On a Thursday night in late June, the building had emptied by 7. Claire should have left too. Her calendar was clear. Her apartment was waiting, and there was absolutely no reason to stay, except that going home meant 4 walls and silence. She was reviewing financial projections when footsteps approached her office. Ryan appeared in the doorway, folder and hand tie loosened, looking like he'd been wrestling with spreadsheets for hours. "Sorry to interrupt. I have the revised Henderson proposal. Wanted to get it to you before tomorrow's call." Claire glanced at the clock. 7:42. "You're still here?" Ryan's smile was tired. "Yeah, wanted to make sure the numbers were bulletproof." Claire gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Let me see." Ryan hesitated, then crossed the office and set the folder down. As Claire opened it, she was immediately struck by the thoroughness. He hadn't just revised the proposal. He'd anticipated every possible objection, provided data for every claim, and structured the entire pitch like a story instead of a transaction. This is exceptional work. Ryan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. I wasn't sure about the pricing model in Section 3. If you think it's too aggressive, I can adjust. It's perfect. You've given them exactly what they need to say yes. Something in Ryan's expression shifted relief, mixing with something else. Gratitude, maybe, but deeper than that. Like he needed this win more than she realized. Thank you, that means a lot. The gratitude in his voice hit Claire wrong, not because it wasn't warranted, but because it sounded so genuine it hurt. When was the last time someone had thanked her like that? Not for signing off on something or approving a budget, but for seeing their work and acknowledging it mattered. She closed the folder, her professional mask slipping just slightly. You shouldn't have to stay this late. Don't you need to get home? Ryan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Mia's at a sleepover tonight. First one since... He caught himself. First one in a while. She was excited. I didn't want to hover. The confession was small, but it opened something. Claire could picture it so clearly, a father fighting every instinct to let his daughter have normal childhood experiences, even though the fear of loss probably never left him. That must be hard, letting go even for a night. Ryan met her eyes, and for a moment, the professional distance between them dissolved entirely. Terrifying, actually, but she needs to be 8, not a therapy patient for my anxiety. Claire's throat tightened. She understood that more than he could possibly know. The constant calculation of appearing normal, while everything inside screamed that normal was a lie people told themselves. Sit. Ryan blinked. I'm sorry. Sit down, Ryan. You look like you're about to collapse. He lowered himself into the chair slowly, like a man who'd forgotten he was allowed to rest. Claire studied him in the dim office light. The coffee stain on his collar, the shadows under his eyes that never quite disappeared, the way he held himself together with visible effort. You've been here 2 months and you haven't taken a single day off. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. I'm building credibility. I can rest later. Or you're running from something that follows you whether you're working or not. The words came out sharper than Claire intended, but Ryan didn't flinch. He just looked at her like she'd identified something he thought he'd hidden better. Is that what you do, run? Fair question. Dangerous question. Claire leaned back, her defenses rising automatically. I'm not the one being analyzed right now. Maybe you should be. The challenge in his voice was gentle, but unmistakable. Claire's first instinct was to shut this down, to remind him she was his boss, to rebuild the walls that were currently crumbling in ways that scared her. Instead, she heard herself say something she'd never said out loud at work. Why does everyone leave? Ryan's eyebrows drew together. What? Claire shook her head, already regretting the question. Nothing. It's late. I'm tired. But Ryan didn't stand, didn't retreat into the safety of professional boundaries. Are you asking me specifically or asking the universe? Claire's laugh was bitter. Both. Neither. I don't know. Ryan leaned forward slightly, his voice careful. Are you okay? Such a simple question. Such an impossible question. Claire's hands twisted in her lap. No one wants to date me. The words hung in the air like a confession she couldn't take back. Ryan's expression shifted surprise, giving way to something that looked almost like pain. I find that hard to believe. Claire's smile was sharp defensive. They see the CEO, the corner office, the success. They don't see me. Maybe they see what you let them. The observation landed like a punch to the sternum. Claire's defenses flared. You don't know me. Ryan held her gaze steady. You're right, I don't. But I recognize the walls. I built the same ones. A pause. The hum of the building's ventilation system filled the silence. Ryan's voice dropped quieter now. After Emily died, I convinced myself that if I just kept moving, kept working, kept being useful, the grief would eventually give up and leave me alone. But it doesn't work that way. It just makes you really good at pretending. Emily. He'd never said her name before. Claire felt the weight of it, the intimacy of hearing the name of someone who'd been loved and lost. How did she die? Ryan's hands clasped together, knuckles white. Routine surgery, appendix. She was supposed to be home in 2 days. Instead, she developed sepsis and was gone in 4. Claire's chest constricted. I'm so sorry. Ryan nodded, the gesture mechanical practiced. Mia was 6, old enough to understand her mom wasn't coming home. Not old enough to understand why. And I had no idea how to explain that sometimes people just leave, and there's no reason that makes it okay. Claire's throat burned. Is that why you stay late? Why you work yourself into the ground? Because if you're useful enough, valuable enough, maybe the universe won't take anything else. Ryan's eyes snapped to hers, startled by her accuracy. How did you? Because I do the same thing. The admission slipped out before Claire could stop it. Ryan waited, not pushing, just present. Claire stood abruptly, moving to the window, putting distance between them even as everything inside her wanted to close the gap. The city sprawled below, lights against darkness, everyone living their separate lives in separate boxes. I haven't lost anyone. The words felt like a betrayal of Ryan's honesty, but she pushed forward anyway. But I lost things, parts of myself I didn't know I could lose. Ryan's voice came from behind her, gentle. What happened? Claire's hands drifted to the hem of her blouse. She'd done this before, alone in her bathroom, practicing what it might feel like to show someone. But standing here in her office with Ryan behind her made everything feel different. Real. Irreversible. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the fabric. The scar stretched across her lower abdomen, raised and angry, a permanent reminder of the battle she'd survived. Surgical precision couldn't make it pretty. Nothing could make it anything other than what it was, proof that her body had tried to kill her, and the doctors had carved the danger out. Behind her, Ryan went completely still. Claire's voice came out steady despite everything. Stage 3, ovarian cancer. 2 years ago. She dropped her shirt and turned to face him, forcing herself to meet his eyes. His expression was complex, shock and understanding, and something else she couldn't quite name. They got it all. Clean margins. I'm in remission. Statistically, I'm a success story. Ryan stood slowly, and Claire braced for pity, for awkwardness, for the inevitable moment when he'd make an excuse and leave because this was too much, too heavy, too complicated for a Thursday night at the office. Instead, he said quietly, I'm sorry you went through that. Not sorry she had cancer. Sorry she went through it. The distinction mattered more than Claire expected. Don't be. I'm alive. Alive isn't nothing. Claire's laugh was shaky. No, but it's also not enough. Ryan took a step closer, still maintaining respectful distance. What did you lose, besides the obvious? Claire's hands clenched at her sides. My fertility. Any chance of having biological children. My confidence that my body won't betray me again. The belief that someone could look at me and want this. She gestured at herself like she was presenting evidence in a case she'd already lost. Ryan's voice was steady, grounded. Anyone who can't see past a scar doesn't deserve you. That's easy to say. It's also true. Claire turned back to the window, unable to hold his gaze. You don't understand. Dating when you're a CEO is already complicated. Add cancer survivor to the mix, add the fact that I can't have children, add the constant fear of recurrence, and suddenly I'm not a partner anymore. I'm a project. A risk. Something to be managed. Ryan moved to stand beside her at the window, both of them reflected in the glass against the city lights. For what it's worth, I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for. Claire's laugh was hollow. Brave, I hide in this office. I pretend I don't need anyone. I built a company so I'd have something to pour myself into because it's safer than risking rejection. That's not hiding, that's surviving. The distinction hit Claire like a physical thing. Surviving, not thriving, not living, just surviving. She finally turned to look at Ryan directly. Really look at him. The exhaustion in his eyes matched her own. The careful way he held himself, like he was always braced for the next loss. The practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. We're a mess, aren't we? Ryan's smile was small but genuine. Spectacularly. Something about his honesty, his willingness to admit they were both barely holding it together, cracked something open in Claire's chest. She'd spent 2 years being strong, being together, being the woman who survived cancer and came back stronger. She was tired of being that woman. Just for a moment she wanted to be honest. I'm scared all the time, that it'll come back, that I'll die alone, that everything I've built means nothing because there's no one to share it with. Ryan's voice was quiet but certain. You're not alone right now. Claire's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. You should go. Get some rest. The Henderson call is at 9. Ryan didn't move. Claire. It was the first time he'd used her first name. The sound of it in his voice did something to her defenses she didn't expect. I'm not going anywhere. The words echoed the title she'd whispered in her vulnerability, but now they carried weight. Promise. Presence. Claire's throat worked, swallowing around the knot that threatened to choke her. You don't have to do that. I'm your boss. This isn't your responsibility. This isn't about hierarchy. This is about two people being honest in a world that rarely allows it. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to rebuild her walls and push him away and pretend this conversation never happened. But she was so tired of pretending. I don't know how to do this. Ryan's smile was sad and understanding. Me either, but maybe that's okay. They stood there in the dim office, the city humming below, two broken people acknowledging each other's damage without flinching. It wasn't romance. It wasn't even friendship yet. It was something simpler and more profound recognition. Claire finally broke the silence. You should really go home. Mia will be back tomorrow and you need sleep. This time, Ryan nodded. Okay, but Claire, yeah, thank you for trusting me with that. He left before she could respond, the door clicking softly behind him. Claire stood alone in her office, her heart pounding, her defenses in ruins, and for the first time in 2 years, she didn't feel quite so alone. Outside the window, the city continued its endless motion. People in their separate boxes living their separate lives, occasionally intersecting in ways that changed everything. Claire touched her abdomen through her blouse, feeling the ridge of scar tissue beneath the fabric. She'd spent so long seeing it as a mark of what she'd lost. Tonight, in the reflection of Ryan's eyes, she'd seen something different. Not shame, not weakness, just truth. And truth, she was beginning to realize, might be the most dangerous and necessary thing of all. The Henderson call went better than anyone expected. Ryan presented with quiet confidence, Claire closed with strategic precision, and by 10:15 they had verbal commitment pending legal review. The team erupted in restrained celebration, the kind of controlled excitement that happens in professional settings when everyone wants to scream but settles for firm handshakes and carefully worded emails. Claire caught Ryan's eye across the conference room and saw relief so profound it made her chest ache. He needed this win. Not for his career, but for something deeper. proof that he could still function, still contribute, still be more than the ghost of the man he used to be. She understood that better than he knew. The days that followed developed a rhythm neither of them acknowledged, but both of them felt. Ryan would arrive early. Claire was always earlier. They'd exchange brief updates in the break room while coffee brewed conversations that never quite stayed professional. He'd mention Mia's obsession with dinosaurs. She'd share a detail about an investor call, small intimacies disguised as workplace chit-chat. Dana noticed, of course. Dana noticed everything. 2 weeks after their late-night conversation, she cornered Claire in the parking garage. "You're different." Claire clicked her key fob, her car chirping in response. "Different how? You smile now. Real smiles, not the boardroom kind." Claire opened her door, avoiding Dana's knowing gaze. "The Henderson deal closed. I'm allowed to be pleased." "This isn't about Henderson, and you know it." Claire slid into the driver's seat, but Dana held the door open, refusing to let her escape. "Be careful, Claire. I'm always careful." Dana's expression softened. "That's what worries me. You've been careful for 2 years, maybe too careful." She closed the door before Claire could respond, leaving her alone with thoughts she didn't want to examine too closely. The San Francisco trip materialized suddenly the way important things often do. A potential acquisition target wanted FaceTime, the kind of meeting that couldn't happen over video. Claire was expected to attend. She could have sent someone else to manage the operational details. She brought Ryan instead. The flight was professional. They sat in business class reviewing presentation decks, maintaining appropriate distance, saying all the right corporate things. But somewhere over Utah, Ryan fell asleep mid-sentence, his tablet sliding toward his lap. Claire caught it before it fell, and found herself watching him breathe. His face finally relaxed, the exhaustion he carried like armor temporarily set aside. She didn't wake him until the pilot announced their descent. San Francisco greeted them with fog and possibility. The meetings were intense back-to-back negotiations that required every ounce of strategic thinking Claire possessed. Ryan matched her beat for beat, anticipating needs before she voiced them, offering insights that made the acquisition target's CEO lean forward with interest. They were a team, not just colleagues executing tasks, but partners who understood each other's rhythm without explanation. On the second evening, after a dinner that ran 2 hours longer than scheduled, they found themselves walking through North Beach. The city hummed around them, fog rolling in from the bay streetlights, turning everything soft and slightly unreal. Ryan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and smiled, the first genuine smile Claire had seen from him in days. "Mia. She wants to know if San Francisco has dinosaurs." Claire surprised herself by laughing. "Tell her the California Academy of Sciences has an entire exhibit." Ryan typed the response, then looked at Claire with something that might have been vulnerability. "She's coming tomorrow. I couldn't leave her for 4 days. My neighbor's flying out with her." Claire's heart did something complicated. "That's a long trip for an 8-year-old?" She insisted. "Said she wanted to see where I was because I sounded different on the phone." "Different how?" Ryan's eyes met hers, and the streetlight caught something in his expression that made Claire's breath catch. Happier, apparently. She wanted to know what changed. The words hung between them, heavy with implication neither of them was ready to name. Claire cleared her throat, stepping back into safer territory. "Well, we can't have her fly all this way without seeing something memorable. I'll get tickets to the academy, and maybe the exploratorium if we have time." Ryan stopped walking. "You don't have to do that." "I know. I want to." The distinction mattered. Claire could see it register in Ryan's face, gratitude mixing with something more complicated. "Claire, Whatever he'd been about to say was interrupted by his phone ringing. He answered, his expression shifting immediately to concern. "Mia?" What's wrong? Slow down, baby. Claire watched his face cycle through emotions father mode overriding everything else. Okay, it's okay. Put Mrs. Chen on. Yes, I know. I'm not angry. He covered the phone, whispering to Claire. She's scared about the flight tomorrow. Claire gestured for him to handle it, stepping away to give him privacy. But she could still hear the gentleness in his voice, the patience, the way he transformed into someone whose only job was making his daughter feel safe. When he hung up, his shoulders sagged. She's never been on a plane. I forgot that might terrify her. Claire spoke without thinking. I have miles. I can upgrade them to first class, more space, less scary. Ryan's eyes widened. That's too much. It's points. They're meant to be used. Claire, Ryan, let me do this. Please. Something in her voice must have convinced him because he nodded slowly. Thank you. That means more than you know. They walked back to the hotel in comfortable silence, the kind that happens between people who've started to understand each other's language. The next afternoon, Mia Carter burst into the hotel lobby like a small hurricane backpack, bouncing eyes wide with excitement and barely concealed anxiety. She spotted Ryan and launched herself at him with the kind of unself-conscious affection that made Claire's chest ache. Dad! The plane was huge, and they gave me juice, and Mrs. Chen let me have 2 cookies and the clouds looked like dinosaurs. Ryan caught her lifting her effortlessly, his whole face transforming into something Claire had never seen before. Not the competent project director, not the grief-stricken widower, just a father holding his daughter like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I missed you, Bug. I missed you more. Impossible. Mia pulled back, studying his face with the blunt assessment only children possess. You do look happier. Your eyes are less sad. Ryan's throat worked. I'm working on it. That's when Mia noticed Claire standing a respectful distance away. The little girl's assessment was immediate and thorough, taking in Claire's professional attire, her careful posture, the way she held herself like someone unused to being around children. Are you my dad's boss? Claire stepped forward, offering her hand formally. I am, Claire Bennett. It's nice to meet you, Mia. Mia shook her hand with surprising solemnity, then turned to Ryan. She's pretty and tall. Does she know about dinosaurs? Ryan's cheeks colored slightly. I don't know. Why don't you ask her? Mia turned back to Claire with the seriousness of a scholar testing a colleague. What's the difference between a Brachiosaurus and an Apatosaurus? Claire surprised herself by kneeling to Mia's eye level, her business persona softening into something more real. Brachiosaurus had longer front legs, so its back sloped down. Apatosaurus had longer back legs, and its tail worked like a whip for defense. Mia's eyes went wide. You do know dinosaurs. Claire smiled, genuine and unguarded. My nephew was obsessed when he was your age. I learned by necessity. Mia looked at her father with an expression that clearly said this woman was acceptable, then back at Claire. Can you come to the dinosaur museum with us? Claire started to decline to maintain appropriate boundaries, but Ryan's expression stopped her. Not pleading, just open. Like maybe he wanted her there too. I'd like that. The California Academy of Sciences was chaos in the best way. Mia dragged them through exhibits with endless energy, firing questions at both adults without discrimination. Claire found herself explaining evolutionary biology to an 8-year-old, while Ryan watched with something that looked suspiciously like affection. In the planetarium surrounded by projected stars, Mia fell asleep against Ryan's shoulder. Claire sat on his other side, close enough that their arms touched, neither of them moving away. Ryan's voice was quiet, almost lost in the narrator's explanation of distant galaxies. Thank you for this. She's wonderful. She's everything. Claire understood what he meant. Not hyperbole, simple truth. Mia was the reason Ryan got up every morning, the reason he kept moving forward, the reason he hadn't let grief consume him entirely. "You're a good father." Ryan's laugh was soft and sad. "I'm trying. Most days I feel like I'm failing." Claire turned to look at him in the dim light. "She doesn't think you're failing. She's 8. She doesn't know what she's missing." The pain in his voice was raw and undefended. Claire's hand found his in the darkness, squeezing once. "She's not missing love. That's the only thing that matters." Ryan's fingers tightened around hers, and they sat like that through the rest of the show, connected by a touch that meant everything and nothing. Two adults pretending they weren't crossing lines they'd drawn for their own protection. That evening, after Mia had fallen asleep in her hotel room with Mrs. Chen, Ryan found Claire on the small balcony of her suite. The city sprawled below, lights reflecting off the bay fog beginning its slow invasion. "She really likes you." Claire leaned against the railing, grateful for the cool air against her flushed skin. "The feeling's mutual. She's smart and funny and completely fearless. She gets that from her mother." The mention of Emily felt different now. Not a wall between them, but an acknowledgement of the past that shaped who Ryan was. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan moved to stand beside her close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Anything. You ever feel like you're failing her, not because of what you do, but because of what you can't give her?" Ryan was quiet for a long moment, his hands gripping the railing. "Every single day. She deserves 2 parents, a complete family, a mother who can teach her things I don't know how to teach." Claire heard the guilt in his voice, the weight of inadequacy he carried like a second skin. Families aren't always what we're handed. Sometimes they're what we build. Ryan turned to look at her, and in the dim light she could see his eyes were wet. "How do you do that? Do what? Say exactly the thing I need to hear without even trying." Claire's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, dangerous, full of possibilities neither of them had permission to explore. "Ryan," he stepped closer, his voice dropping to something intimate and careful. "I know this is complicated. I know you're my boss. I know there are 1,000 reasons this is a terrible idea. But Claire, I haven't felt this alive in 2 years. You make me want to be more than just a functional human getting through each day." Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. Everything in her wanted to close the distance between them, to let this moment become something irreversible. But the rational part of her brain, the CEO part, was already calculating consequences. "We can't." "I know." "The power dynamic alone." "I know." "Then why are you telling me this?" Ryan's smile was sad and honest. "Because I'm tired of pretending. And I think you are too." He was right. God, he was right. Claire was exhausted from pretending she didn't notice when he entered a room, that her day didn't feel brighter when they worked together, that watching him with Mia hadn't cracked something open in her chest she'd thought was permanently sealed. But knowing he was right didn't make it less impossible. "We have a huge client meeting tomorrow. We should both get some sleep." Ryan nodded, accepting the retreat even as disappointment flickered across his face. "Good night, Claire. Good night." He left, and Claire stood on the balcony alone, gripping the railing hard enough to hurt, fighting the urge to call him back and damn the consequences. The return flight to Denver felt different. They sat in their usual seats, reviewed their usual documents, but everything had shifted. Mia colored in the seat behind them, occasionally leaning forward to show them her drawings. Each time she did, Ryan's hand would briefly touch Claire's shoulder, casual and familiar, and Claire would feel the touch echo through her entire body. This was dangerous. This was wrong. This was the best she'd felt in years. Monday morning arrived with the weight of reality. Back in the office, surrounded by employees and expectations and the clear hierarchy that made their connection inappropriate, Claire felt the walls rebuilding themselves. but apparently they hadn't been as subtle as she'd thought. Dana appeared in her doorway at 10:30, closed the door behind her, and crossed her arms. "We need to talk." Claire didn't look up from her laptop. "I'm busy." "People are talking, Claire." That got her attention. Claire's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "About what?" Dana's expression was sympathetic but firm. "About you and Ryan, about Thanksgiving dinner at your place, about weekend hikes, about the way you look at each other in meetings." Claire's stomach dropped. "There's nothing to talk about." "Really?" "Because 3 people have come to me asking about company policy on supervisor-employee relationships, and 2 more have expressed concern that favoritism might be affecting project assignments." The words hit Claire like physical blows. She'd been so careful, or she'd thought she had been. He's the most qualified person for those projects. "I believe you, but Claire, as your friend, I need to say this. He's a widower with a child. You're his direct supervisor. The power imbalance alone makes this a minefield. And if it goes wrong, it won't just be your heart that breaks. It'll be your reputation, his career, and potentially that little girl's stability." Claire's hands clenched in her lap nails, biting into her palms. Nothing has happened yet, but something is happening. And you need to decide what's more important, because continuing like this isn't sustainable. After Dana left, Claire sat in her office staring at nothing. She'd survived cancer. She'd built a company from scratch. She'd learned to live with scars and fear and uncertainty, but she had no idea how to navigate this. The problem was simple and impossible. She had power over Ryan's career. Every assignment, every review, every decision about his future came through her. If they pursued whatever this was between them, how could he ever be sure his feelings were real and not influenced by professional obligation? How could anyone believe she was making objective decisions about his work? And worse, what if it ended badly? What if they tried and failed, and she became the boss who broke a widower's heart, who disrupted a grieving child's life, who let personal feelings compromise professional judgment? Claire pulled up the company handbook, reading the relationship disclosure policy she'd approved years ago without thinking it would ever apply to her. Clear reporting line changes. Transparency with HR. Potential reassignment if conflicts arose. All of it felt clinical and cold, reducing human connection to bureaucratic procedures. But the alternative was worse. The alternative was people whispering that she was taking advantage of her position, that Ryan was sleeping his way to better projects, that his vulnerability made him a target for someone with power. Claire's throat tightened. She'd spent 2 years learning to live as a cancer survivor. She had no idea how to live as someone who'd fallen for the one person she absolutely couldn't have. Her phone lit up with a message from Ryan. Coffee. 2 weeks ago, she would have said yes without thinking. Now, even that simple question felt loaded with consequence. Claire typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on buried in meetings, rain check. The lie tasted bitter, but not as bitter as the truth would be. From her window, she could see Ryan's desk. He was staring at his phone, and even from this distance she could see the moment her message landed. The way his shoulders dropped slightly, the way he set the phone down like it had become heavier. Claire turned away from the window back to her work, back to the safety of the spreadsheets and strategy. But for the first time since her diagnosis work felt like running away instead of moving forward. And she had absolutely no idea what to do about it. The distance Claire tried to create felt like cutting off her own air supply, but she maintained it with the same discipline that had built her company. Professional, polite, carefully boundaried. Ryan noticed immediately. Of course he did. The first few days he tested the edges. Small questions that used to lead to longer conversations now received efficient minimal answers. Invitations to coffee met with calendar conflicts. The easy rhythm they'd developed dissolved into corporate formality that tasted like ashes. By the end of the first week, Ryan stopped trying. Claire told herself this was the right choice, the responsible choice, the choice that protected both of them from the inevitable complications. She didn't allow herself to acknowledge how much it hurt to watch Ryan's expression shudder when she passed him in hallways, didn't count the number of times she almost knocked on his office door just to hear his voice. Work became her refuge again the same way it had been after her diagnosis. Numbers didn't have feelings. Strategy didn't require vulnerability. Success could be measured in metrics that had nothing to do with the hollow ache in her chest. On a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks into the careful distance, Ryan appeared in her doorway. His energy was different, lighter, almost like the man he'd been in San Francisco. Mia got into the summer science program, the one you recommended. Claire looked up from her screen, and for just a second she let herself be genuinely happy for him. Ryan, that's wonderful. She'll love it. His smile was bright and real, the kind that transformed his whole face. She's been talking about it non-stop. Dinosaurs and space and some robot-building workshop. I don't think I've seen her this excited since before Emily died. The name landed differently now. Not a barrier between them, but a reminder that Ryan's life was complicated in ways Claire couldn't untangle without causing damage. She forced herself back to neutral. That's great. Congratulations. Ryan's smile faltered slightly, confusion replacing joy. Is everything okay? Fine. Just busy. Claire, did I do something wrong? The question was genuine, vulnerable, and it broke something inside her. But she couldn't afford to let it show. Of course not. We just need to maintain professional boundaries. Ryan went very still. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. Professional boundaries. Right. That's what you call what happened in San Francisco. What's been happening for months lacks boundaries. Claire's throat constricted, but she kept her expression neutral. It was a mistake to blur those lines. I'm your supervisor. There's a power dynamic at play that makes anything else inappropriate. A power dynamic. He repeated the words like they tasted wrong. Claire met his eyes, forcing herself not to flinch. Yes, and it needs to stop. Ryan stood slowly, his jaw tight. The hurt in his eyes was unmistakable, but he covered it with the same professionalism she was hiding behind. Understood. Is there anything else you need, Ms. Bennett? The formal address felt like a slap, which was probably the point. No, that's all. Ryan left without another word. The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded like something breaking. Claire sat, frozen at her desk, her hands shaking, fighting the urge to run after him and take it all back. She'd done the right thing. She'd protected them both. She'd maintained appropriate professional distance. So why did it feel like she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life? The weeks that followed were a masterclass in professional detachment. Ryan was never late to meetings. His work was flawless. His communication was clear and concise, and he never, not once, let his mask slip. At first, Claire told herself this was better, cleaner, safer. By the end of the second week, she started to understand that safe felt a lot like slowly dying inside. She caught glimpses of him with other team members, saw flashes of the warmth and humor he used to share with her, directed elsewhere. In meetings, he addressed her formally, maintained perfect eye contact, and never let a single personal detail slip into their interactions. It was exactly what she'd asked for. It was unbearable. Dana watched the whole thing with the expression of someone watching a train wreck in slow motion. She didn't say, "I told you so," which somehow made it worse. One evening, after a particularly tense leadership meeting where Ryan had been professionally perfect and personally absent, Dana followed Claire to her office. "You look like hell." Claire didn't look up from her laptop. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're miserable." And before you argue, I've known you for 5 years. I know what miserable looks like on you." Claire's fingers stilled on the keyboard. It was the right decision. Was it? Because from where I'm standing, you both look like you're barely functioning. Claire finally looked up, and Dana must have seen something in her expression because her tone softened. "Claire, I didn't tell you to end it. I told you to be careful. There's a difference. The power dynamic makes it impossible. The power dynamic makes it complicated, not impossible. We have policies for exactly this situation." Claire's laugh was bitter. Policies that require disclosure, reporting line changes, everyone knowing. And even then, how could he ever be sure his feelings are real and not influenced by the fact that I control his career? How could anyone believe I'm making objective decisions? Dana pulled up a chair, her expression serious. "So you'd rather have nothing? You'd rather spend the rest of your life wondering what if that's surviving Claire, not living?" The words hit too close to something Claire had said to herself in the dark at 3 a.m. It's not just about me. He has Mia. If this goes wrong, it's not just two adults dealing with a breakup. It's a child who's already lost her mother, potentially losing another person she started to trust. And if it goes right? Claire had no answer for that. She'd spent so long preparing for disaster that the possibility of happiness felt like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. Dana stood squeezing Claire's shoulder as she passed. Just think about it. Life's too short to only make safe choices. After she left, Claire sat in the growing darkness of her office, watching the city lights flicker on below. Somewhere out there, Ryan was picking Mia up from school, helping with homework, making dinner, being a father. Living a life that didn't include Claire except as his boss. It was exactly what she'd chosen. It felt like punishment. The emergency came on a Tuesday morning, mundane and catastrophic the way emergencies often are. Claire was in a budget meeting when she heard Ryan's voice in the hallway, tense and frustrated. She told herself not to pay attention, to stay focused on quarterly projections. But his tone cut through her professional detachment like a knife. She excused herself, stepping into the hallway just as Ryan hung up his phone, looking like the universe had personally betrayed him. "Everything okay?" The formal concern in her voice sounded foreign, even to her own ears. Ryan glanced at her, and for just a second she saw past his professional mask to the exhaustion and stress underneath. "Pipe burst in my building. Entire floors flooded. They're saying it'll be at least a week before anyone can move back in." Claire's mind immediately went to logistics. "Do you need to leave? Go take care of it." "My neighbor's handling the emergency crew, but I need to find a hotel that allows pets. Mia's hamster won't survive being in a carrier for a week." He scrolled through his phone, jaw tight, making calls between sentences. Claire listened to him get rejected by 3 hotels in rapid succession, each no pets policy landing like another weight on shoulders already carrying too much. Something in her chest cracked. All her careful distance, all her professional boundaries, none of it mattered in the face of Ryan's obvious desperation. "Stay at my place." Ryan's head snapped up. "What? My apartment. It's empty most of the time anyway. You and Mia can stay there until your building is fixed." "Claire, I can't." "Why not?" "It's practical. You need a place I have space. This doesn't have to be complicated." Ryan studied her face, searching for something. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "Are you sure?" No, she wasn't sure. This was probably the worst idea she'd had in years. Inviting him into her private space, breaking down the last wall she'd managed to maintain, creating proximity when distance was the only thing keeping her sane. But she heard herself say, "I'm sure." Relief flickered across Ryan's expression, quickly masked. "Just until the apartment is fixed, a week at most. However long you need." The words carried more weight than they should have. Ryan nodded slowly, something unreadable in his eyes. "Thank you. I'll make sure we stay out of your way." Claire wanted to tell him that wasn't the point, that she wanted them there, that her apartment had felt like a mausoleum for 2 years, and maybe having life in it would feel like breathing again. Instead, she just said, "I'll text you the address." That evening, Claire stood in her apartment trying to see it through someone else's eyes. Minimalist, clean, expensive, and completely devoid of personality. Every surface was clear. Every color was neutral. It looked like a hotel room, not a home. She'd designed it this way deliberately after her diagnosis. Easy to maintain. Nothing to dust or clutter or require emotional investment. A place to sleep between battles with her company and her body. Looking at it now, knowing Mia was about to walk through the door, Claire felt a rush of something that might have been shame. The knock came at 6:30. She opened the door to find Ryan holding 2 suitcases, Mia clutching a hamster cage, both of them looking slightly shell-shocked. Mia recovered first, pushing past her father to survey the apartment with wide eyes. "Whoa, Dad, she lives in a museum." Claire surprised herself by laughing a real laugh that loosened something in her chest. "It is a bit sterile, isn't it?" Mia turned to her with the blunt honesty only children possess. "Sterile means super clean, right? Mom used to say that about Dad's car, before she died." The casual mention of Emily should have been awkward. Instead, it felt like Mia was offering Claire a piece of their history, testing whether she could handle it. "I bet your dad's car is much more interesting than this place," Mia giggled. "It has dinosaur stickers, and usually French fries in the seats." Ryan's cheeks colored. "We've been busy." Claire met his eyes and felt the careful distance they'd maintained for weeks start to dissolve. "You must be hungry. I ordered pizza. I hope that's okay." Mia's face lit up. "Dad never remembers to order dinner until it's super late and I'm already cranky." "Mia, it's true. You get all focused and forget we have to eat." Claire watched Ryan absorb his daughter's assessment with the kind of patience that comes from practice. "You're right. I do that sometimes. I'm working on it." The gentle admission, the lack of defensiveness, the way he took his daughter's criticism as information rather than attack it, did something to Claire's carefully constructed walls. She showed them to the guest room, apologizing for the lack of kid-friendly decor. Mia immediately began unpacking, narrating her entire process, transforming the sterile space into something lived in within minutes. Ryan lingered in the doorway, watching his daughter with the expression of a man who couldn't quite believe he'd gotten this lucky, even after everything he'd lost. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For this, I know it's—" "Don't. It's fine. Better than fine." Their eyes met, and Claire saw the same question she was asking herself reflected back. How were they supposed to maintain distance when they were sharing a space? When the intimacy they'd been avoiding was about to become unavoidable? Ryan cleared his throat. "I should help her get settled." "Right, I'll be in the kitchen." She retreated, giving them space, and found herself standing in front of her rarely used stove, trying to remember the last time she'd cooked anything beyond coffee. Ryan appeared 20 minutes later, sleeves rolled up, looking around the pristine kitchen like he was calculating possibilities. "Can I make dinner?" Claire gestured to the space, oddly embarrassed. "I don't cook much. I'm not sure what's in there." Ryan opened the fridge and laughed softly. "Takeout containers and condiments. Very executive." "I told you I'm busy." Busy isn't an excuse for not feeding yourself properly. The gentle scolding should have annoyed her. Instead, it felt like care, and Claire found herself unable to look away as Ryan started pulling ingredients from her barren pantry, somehow assembling the components for a meal from what looked like nothing. "You're good at this." Ryan glanced at her, something soft in his expression. "Single dad. You learn or you starve." Mia appeared, dragging a dining chair to the counter so she could watch her father work. Dad makes really good pancakes, but only on weekends. During the week, we mostly eat cereal. Mia, you're exposing all my secrets. Good. Maybe Claire can help you remember to eat vegetables. Claire caught Ryan's eye and felt laughter bubbling up real and unexpected. This standing in her sterile kitchen watching a father and daughter turn her empty space into something warm felt more like home than anything had in years. They ate at her dining table, the one she'd bought for entertaining clients and used exactly twice. Mia told stories about school, about her friends, about the science program she was starting next week. Ryan asked questions genuinely interested, and Claire found herself contributing without thinking, the conversation flowing naturally. After dinner, Mia insisted on showing Claire her hamster, a small, furry creature named Dr. Claw, who apparently had strong opinions about bedtime. He gets grumpy if he doesn't get his exercise wheel time. Claire watched Mia set up an elaborate hamster playground on the guest room floor, narrating Dr. Claw's adventures like she was documenting a nature special. "Do you like animals?" Mia asked suddenly. "I haven't had any since I was young. My parents had a dog." "Why don't you get one now?" The question was simple. The answer was complicated. "I work a lot. It wouldn't be fair to the animal." Mia considered this with the seriousness of a judge weighing evidence. "Dad works a lot too, but he says I need him, so he figures it out of the mouths of children." Claire's throat tightened. "Your dad is right. Are you lonely?" The question came without warning, without malice, just pure, childlike curiosity. Claire blinked, caught completely off guard. "Why would you ask that?" Mia shrugged, still watching Dr. Claw navigate his obstacle course. "You have a really big apartment and no pictures anywhere. Our house is small, but Dad put up lots of pictures of Mom and me and Grandma and Grandpa. He says it's important to remember people." Claire knelt beside Mia, eye level, her heart doing something complicated. "You're very observant." "Dad says it's one of my superpowers, like noticing things other people don't see." "What else do you notice?" Mia turned to face her fully, her young face surprisingly serious. "You make my dad smile, like real smiles. He's been sad for a really long time, and then you showed up and he started coming home less tired." Claire's breath caught. "Mia, I'm just your dad's boss." Bosses don't let people stay at their house when pipes break, and they don't come to dinosaur museums, and they definitely don't look at people the way you look at my dad." 8 years old. This child was 8 years old, and she'd just dismantled every defense Claire had constructed. "How do I look at your dad?" Mia smiled, the kind of knowing smile that belonged on someone much older. "Like he's important. Not like work important, real important." Before Claire could respond, Ryan appeared in the doorway. "Mia, time for bed. You have school tomorrow." "But Dad..." "No buts. Brush your teeth." Mia sighed dramatically, but obeyed, shooting Claire a look that clearly said this conversation wasn't over. After Mia was settled, Claire found herself on her small balcony, the one she'd bought the apartment for and barely used. The Denver skyline sparkled below the mountains, dark silhouettes against the evening sky. She heard the sliding door open, felt rather than saw Ryan join her. "She interrogate you?" Claire's laugh was shaky. "Is that what that was? She's been perceptive lately. Asking questions I don't know how to answer." They stood in silence, shoulders not quite touching the night air, cool and clearing. "I missed you." Claire's words surprised even herself. Ryan turned to look at her, and in the dim light she could see his expression shift from surprise to something raw and honest. "Then why push me away?" "Because I was terrified." "Of what?" Claire gripped the balcony railing, forcing herself to be honest. "Of you feeling obligated. Of people thinking I was taking advantage. of this being real and then losing it, of hurting Mia, of failing at being something I don't know how to be. Ryan moved closer, his voice steady and certain. I'm here because you're you. Not because you're my boss. Not because I feel obligated. Because when I'm around you, I remember what it feels like to want something beyond just getting through another day. Claire's eyes burned. Ryan, the power dynamic, is real and complicated, but manageable if we're honest. If we disclose to HR, change reporting lines, do everything by the book. What if it doesn't work? What if we try and fail and I become the boss who broke your heart? What happens to Mia? Ryan's hand found hers on the railing. What if it does work? What if we spend the rest of our lives wondering, what if because we were too scared to try? Claire's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I don't know how to do this. Me either, but Claire, I haven't felt this alive since Emily died. You showed me your scar and you didn't apologize for surviving. You met my daughter and treated her like a person instead of a tragedy. You make me want to be brave again. Claire turned to face him fully, tears tracking down her cheeks. I can't promise it won't be hard. I don't need promises. I just need you to stop running. I'm not going anywhere. The words echoed the title that had started everything, but now they were hers. Her commitment. Her choice. Ryan's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away tears. Are you sure? No. But I'm sure that I want to try. That I'm tired of being safe. That whatever this is scares me less than spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been. Ryan's smile was small and real and full of hope. We do this right. We tell HR tomorrow. We change reporting lines. We're completely transparent. Okay. And we go slow. For Mia. Make sure she's ready. Okay. And Claire, if you need to run, if this gets too scary, you tell me. Don't just disappear. I promise. He kissed her, then gentle and hesitant, like he was asking permission with every second. Claire kissed him back, tasting salt and hope, and the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to have this. When they finally pulled apart, Ryan pressed his forehead to hers. I'm still your employee until HR processes the disclosure. Claire laughed, the sound watery but genuine. Then I guess we'll have to be very professional until then. Very professional. His thumb traced her jaw, completely contradicting his words. They stayed on the balcony until the city quieted, talking about logistics and fears and the careful steps they'd need to take. It wasn't romantic. It was better. It was real. Inside, Mia had fallen asleep with Dr. Claw's cage on her nightstand. Ryan checked on her with the practiced motion of a parent who'd done this 1,000 times. Claire watched from the doorway, her heart doing that complicated thing again. She's amazing. Ryan turned his expression soft. She really is, and she already loves you. How can you tell? Because she shared her dinosaur facts. She doesn't do that with just anyone. Claire's laugh was quiet, careful not to wake the sleeping child. High praise. Ryan moved toward the door, toward his room, but paused beside Claire. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. Yeah? But we'll figure it out. Yeah. He kissed her forehead, achingly gentle, then disappeared into the guest room. Claire stood in her hallway in her sterile apartment that suddenly felt less empty, and let herself believe that maybe surviving wasn't the same as living, and maybe it was okay to want both. Tomorrow, they'd face HR. They'd navigate policies and reporting changes and the complicated reality of trying to build something real in the middle of corporate structure. But tonight, she had Ryan and Mia under her roof, and for the first time in 2 years, her apartment felt like it might become a home. Part 6, Resolution, plus Epilogue. 400 words. The next morning arrived with the kind of clarity that comes after making impossible decisions. Claire woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Mia's laughter drifting from the kitchen, both so foreign to her usual silent mornings that for a moment she thought she was dreaming. She found them at the breakfast bar, Mia swinging her legs, while Ryan flipped pancakes with the ease of someone who'd done this countless times. The domesticity of it, the casual intimacy of watching them exist in her space, made Claire's chest ache in ways she hadn't expected. Ryan glanced up, his smile soft and uncertain. "Morning, I hope this is okay," Mia insisted on pancakes. "They're Dad's specialty," Mia announced proudly. "He makes them shaped like dinosaurs, but they mostly look like blobs." Claire moved closer, accepting the coffee Ryan poured, without asking how she took it. He already knew. Medium roast, no sugar, just a splash of cream. Pancakes are perfect. They ate together, navigating the strange newness of this configuration. Claire in her work clothes, Ryan and Mia in their morning chaos, all of them pretending this was normal, even though everything had changed. After Mia left for school with Ryan, Claire stood alone in her apartment and let herself acknowledge the truth. She wanted this, the noise, the mess, the feeling of coming home to people who mattered. It terrified her more than cancer ever had. At 9:30, she and Ryan sat across from Dana in the HR office. Professional, composed, absolutely transparent. Dana listened without interruption as they explained the situation, her expression neutral in that practiced way HR directors perfect. When they finished, she leaned back in her chair. "You understand this requires immediate reporting line changes." Claire nodded. "Ryan will report to the COO effective today. All performance reviews, compensation decisions, and project assignments will go through that channel. And you're both willing to sign acknowledgement of the policy and the potential complications." "Yes," they said in unison. Dana's professional mask cracked, slightly warmth bleeding through. "Okay then, I'll process the paperwork. Ryan, I'll schedule a meeting with you and James this afternoon to transition your reporting structure. Claire, you'll need to send an email to the leadership team explaining the change without going into personal details." After they left Dana's office, Ryan caught Claire's hand in the empty hallway. That wasn't so bad. That was the easy part. Ryan's thumb traced circles on her palm. "We'll figure out the hard parts, too." Claire wanted to believe him. She was trying very hard to believe him. The email went out at 10. Brief, professional, citing operational efficiency as the reason for Ryan's reporting change. By 10:15, Claire's phone was buzzing with questions she didn't answer. By lunch, the entire office knew something had shifted. People were too professional to ask directly, but Claire felt the weight of their speculation. The sideways glances. The conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. The careful distance some employees suddenly maintained. She'd expected this. It still felt like walking through her office with no skin. Ryan handled it differently. When someone made a joke about his sudden reporting change, he smiled and said clearly, "I'm dating Claire. We disclosed it to HR. Everything's above board." The directness disarmed people. Most of them anyway. That evening, back at the apartment that was starting to feel less like hers and more like theirs, Mia dropped her backpack by the door and fixed Claire with a serious look. "Are you my dad's girlfriend now?" Ryan, who'd been taking off his shoes, froze. Claire knelt to Mia's eye level the same way she had at the dinosaur museum. "Would that be okay with you?" Mia's face scrunched up in thought, the expression so much like Ryan's it made Claire's heart squeeze. "I don't know yet. I liked you before, but girlfriend is different." "You're right, it is different. What if you leave?" The question was small and devastating. Claire felt Ryan tense behind her, but she kept her focus on Mia. "I can't promise life won't be hard sometimes. but I can promise I won't disappear without telling you the truth. If something changes, you'll know. You won't wake up one day and find me gone." Mia studied her with those two old eyes. Mom didn't mean to leave, but she still did. Claire's throat closed. She glanced at Ryan, who nodded slightly, giving her permission to navigate this. "You're absolutely right. Sometimes people leave even when they don't want to, even when we love them. I can't promise that won't happen, but I can promise I'll be honest with you, always." Mia nodded slowly, processing. "Okay, but I'm going to test you first. That's fair. If you pass, then you can be Dad's girlfriend." Ryan cleared his throat, clearly fighting emotion. "Mia, that's not really how it works. Yes, it is, Dad. You said we're a team. Teams vote on new members." Claire caught Ryan's eye over Mia's head and saw him struggling between parental authority and the knowledge that his daughter was absolutely right. "What do I need to do to pass?" Claire asked. Mia considered this with the gravity of a judge. "You have to come to my science fair next week, and you have to actually care, not just pretend. Deal?" Mia offered her hand to shake solemn and businesslike. Claire took it, sealing the agreement. After Mia went to bed, Ryan found Claire on the balcony again. It was becoming their space, the place where hard truths got spoken. "Thank you for that, for taking her seriously." Claire leaned against the railing, the Denver night cool against her skin. "She's protecting herself. I respect that." Ryan moved to stand beside her, close but not touching. "She's not the only one who's scared." "I know. Are you having second thoughts?" Claire turned to face him, needing him to see the truth in her eyes. "About us, no. About whether I'm capable of being what you both need, every single second." Ryan's hand found hers. "Claire, I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be present, that's all. What if I'm not enough? What if you're exactly right?" They stood in the quiet, connected by touch and hope, and the terrifying leap they'd both decided to take. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that was messy and imperfect and somehow right. Mia tested Claire constantly small challenges disguised as casual requests. Help with homework, braiding hair for school, remembering which days were library days. Claire failed, sometimes forgot things, got overwhelmed. But she showed up, every time. The science fair arrived with the weight of judgment. Claire sat in an elementary school gymnasium surrounded by baking soda volcanoes and solar system dioramas, watching Mia explain her project on metamorphosis to a panel of teachers. "Caterpillars basically turn into goo," Mia said with scientific enthusiasm. "They dissolve their own bodies and rebuild from the liquid. Isn't that cool?" The metaphor wasn't lost on Claire. Sometimes you had to break down completely to become something new. After the judges moved on, Mia turned to Claire with barely contained excitement. "Did you see? I didn't mess up my explanation. You were perfect, and that display board is incredible. Dad helped with the printing, but I did all the research myself." Claire knelt beside the display, genuinely interested. "Tell me about this phase here. The chrysalis stage." Mia's face lit up, and she launched into an explanation about cellular reorganization that was way more detailed than Claire expected from an 8-year-old. Ryan watched from a few feet away, his expression so full of love and pride it hurt to look at. On the drive home, Mia announced from the back seat, "You passed." Claire glanced at Ryan, confused. "The test, you passed. You can be Dad's girlfriend officially now." Ryan's hand found Claire's across the center console, squeezing gently. "High praise from the toughest judge I know." That night, after Mia was asleep, Ryan pulled Claire close on the couch, both of them exhausted but content. "I've been thinking." Claire's stomach tightened. Thinking in her experience usually preceded bad news. "About moving out. My apartment's been fixed for a week. I've been dragging my feet because Mia's settled and this place feels like home, Claire finished quietly. Ryan nodded against her shoulder. But I don't want to assume. We've only been doing this officially for a few weeks. Moving in feels fast. Claire was quiet for a long moment, fear and hope warring in her chest. What if I don't want you to leave? Ryan pulled back to look at her. Claire, I'm not saying move in permanently, but maybe don't rush back to your place. Maybe we figure out what this looks like when we're not in crisis mode. Ryan's smile was slow and real. You sure? No, but I'm sure I want to try. They kissed soft and careful, still learning each other's rhythms. But life, as it tends to do, had other plans. 3 weeks later, Claire sat across from her oncologist, her hands clenched in her lap, trying to process the words coming out of the doctor's mouth. The scan shows something. It's small, could be nothing. But given your history, we need to do a biopsy. The room tilted. Claire heard herself asking clinical questions, maintaining composure, acting like this was just information to process. Inside, she was 17 again, hearing the original diagnosis, feeling her entire future collapse into uncertainty. She drove home on autopilot, walked into the apartment and found Ryan cooking dinner while Mia did homework at the counter. Hey, how was the appointment? Claire opened her mouth to say fine to maintain the pretense to protect them from her fear. Instead, what came out was, they found something. Ryan went very still. Mia looked up, her young face immediately frightened. Claire forced herself to clarify. They don't know what it is yet. It might be nothing, but they need to do a biopsy. Ryan crossed to her in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms. Claire stood rigid for a moment, then broke, her carefully constructed composure shattering. I thought I was done. I thought I survived. I know. Mia appeared at Claire's side, wrapping small arms around her waist. Are you going to die like Mom? The question was so direct, so terrified, it cut through everything. Claire knelt, taking Mia's face in her hands. I don't know, sweetheart. The doctors need to check, but I promise I'll tell you the truth about what's happening. No surprises. Okay. Mia nodded, tears streaming down her face. They spent the evening on the couch, Mia wedged between them. No one pretending this was fine. Ryan held Claire's hand with a grip that said he wasn't letting go. Mia fell asleep eventually, exhausted by fear, and Ryan carried her to bed. When he came back, Claire was staring at nothing. I should let you go, both of you, before this gets worse. Ryan sat beside her, his voice steady and absolutely certain. No. Ryan, you already lost Emily. Mia already lost her mother. If this is cancer again, if I'm dying, I won't let you go through that again. Ryan took both her hands, forcing her to look at him. Emily taught me something when she died. She didn't die because I loved her. She died because her body failed her. And every single day I spent with her, every moment of love and mess and ordinary life, it was worth it, even knowing how it ended. Claire's voice broke. But Mia needs to see that love is worth the risk, that we don't run from hard things, that showing up for people we care about matters more than protecting ourselves from potential pain. I'm so scared. Me too. But we're scared together. That's the whole point. The biopsy came back benign. Not cancer, just scar tissue that looked suspicious on imaging. Claire sobbed in the doctor's office with relief so intense it felt like drowning. Ryan held her in the parking lot afterward, both of them shaking. We're okay. You're okay. But the scare had changed something. Clarified something. Life was uncertain. Time was limited. And wasting either on fear felt like the real tragedy. 2 months later, Ryan came home from work with an expression Claire couldn't read. Mia was at a friend's house giving them rare privacy. "I got a job offer." Claire's stomach dropped. "Where? Competitor. Better pay, more flexibility, and no workplace complications." The practical part of Claire's brain understood immediately. This would solve everything. No more whispers about their relationship. No more careful navigation of professional boundaries. Ryan could advance his career without wondering if she was influencing his trajectory. But the part of her that had just spent 2 months terrified of losing him wanted to beg him to stay. Instead, she said, "Take it." Ryan's eyebrows rose. "You don't want to talk about it." "What's there to talk about?" "It's a better opportunity, and it eliminates any concerns about our relationship affecting your work." Ryan moved closer, studying her face. "Claire, if you want me to stay, I want you to do what's best for your career, for you and Mia." "And what about us?" Claire met his eyes, forcing honesty. "We're stronger than an org chart. We proved that. If this is the right move, make it." Ryan's smile was slow and full of something that looked like wonder. "How did I get this lucky?" I ask myself the same thing. He kissed her deep and certain, and Claire let herself believe they'd survive this change too. Ryan took the job. The transition was smoother than either of them expected. Without the workplace complication, their relationship settled into something more real. They argued about whose turn it was to do dishes. They navigated Mia's mood swings and homework meltdowns. They had boring Tuesday evenings and spectacular weekend adventures. They were normal. It was extraordinary. On a Saturday morning in early fall, Ryan appeared in the bedroom doorway while Claire was getting dressed for a hike. I have something for you." He held out a small box, simple and unadorned. Claire's heart stuttered. "Ryan, it's not that. Not yet. Open it." Inside was a silver key on a small chain with a butterfly charm. "It's for our place. I know technically it's still your apartment on the lease, but it's ours, all 3 of us, and I wanted you to have something that made that official." Claire's hands trembled as she lifted the key. "The butterfly." Mia picked it. "Said you liked her metamorphosis project." Claire's vision blurred. "I love you." The words came out without planning, without filters, just pure truth. Ryan's expression transformed. "Say it again." "I love you, you and Mia, this messy, complicated, imperfect life we're building, all of it." Ryan cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away tears. "We love you too, so much it scares me sometimes." They held each other in the morning light, the key pressed between them, a promise of home. 1 year later, everything changed again. Claire stood in her corner office, the one she'd occupied for 6 years, looking at the acquisition paperwork spread across her desk. A larger company had made an offer too good to refuse. Her employees would be protected. The mission would continue, and she would walk away with enough money to never work again if she chose. She signed the papers with a hand that didn't shake. Dana appeared in the doorway, her expression bittersweet. End of an era. Claire looked around the office that had been her entire world. Yeah, it really is. Any regrets? Claire thought about the woman she'd been when she first occupied this space, driven, isolated. Convinced that success meant sacrifice. She'd built something impressive, but she'd nearly lost herself in the process. "None." Dana hugged her fierce and quick. "He's good for you. They both are." "I know." After Dana left, Claire packed the few personal items she'd accumulated. A photo of her leadership team. A card from a grateful client. And tucked in her desk drawer, the program from Mia's science fair saved because it mattered more than any quarterly report. Ryan and Mia were waiting outside the building. Mia bounced with barely contained excitement. "Are you done being a CEO? For now. What are you going to do instead?" Claire looked at Ryan, who smiled like he already knew. Figure it out as I go. They walked together through downtown Denver. Mia, chattering about her day, Ryan's hand warm in Claire's. The mountains rose in the distance, permanent and steadfast. A butterfly drifted past, small and determined, fighting the autumn wind. Mia pointed. How does it know where it's going? Claire watched the butterfly navigate the unpredictable air currents, adapting, persisting. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just keeps going anyway. Ryan pulled her close, and Mia wedged between them. Sounds like us. They kept walking. Claire's phone buzzed with congratulatory messages she'd answer later. Somewhere behind them, her old life was being packed into boxes. Ahead, the future stretched uncertain and full of possibility. Her scar ached sometimes, a reminder that her body had failed her once and might again. Ryan still had grief days where Emily's absence was so acute he could barely breathe. Mia tested boundaries and asked impossible questions, and occasionally told Claire she wished she was her real mom before apologizing in tears. It was messy and hard, and nothing like the fairy tale Claire once thought she needed. It was better, because they showed up, even on bad days, even when it was scary, even when the outcomes were uncertain. That evening, back in the apartment that was now officially home to all three of them, Claire stood at the balcony door, watching the sun set over the city. Ryan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You okay? Claire leaned into him, solid and real. Better than okay. I spent so long just surviving, trying to prove I was still valuable even though my body betrayed me, building walls so high no one could see I was scared. And now... Claire turned in his arms, looking into eyes that had seen her scars and hadn't flinched. Now I'm living, actually living, and it's terrifying and wonderful and so much better than safe. From inside, Mia called out that dinner was ready, her voice bright and demanding in theirs. Ryan kissed Claire's forehead. Come on, our daughter's hungry. Our daughter. The words settled into Claire's chest like roots taking hold. They went inside together to the table Mia had set with her particular brand of chaos to the life they were building, one ordinary moment at a time. No one wanted to date the cancer survivor with scars and fears and complications. But Ryan Carter had stayed anyway, had looked at her damage and said, I'm not going anywhere, had brought his grieving daughter and his own broken pieces and said, maybe we can build something together. And they had. Not perfect, not easy, but real and chosen and worth every risk. Outside, the city hummed with other people's stories. Inside, three people who'd learned that surviving wasn't enough sat down to dinner, to conversation, to the beautiful mundane work of being a family. Claire looked at Ryan, across the table at Mia, stealing bites from both their plates, and felt something settle deep in her bones. This was worth it, all of it. The fear and the risk, and the terrifying leap into uncertainty. Because on the other side of fear was this. Was home. Was love that didn't require perfection, just presence. Was life. Actual, messy, extraordinary life. And Claire Bennett, cancer survivor, former CEO, chosen mother, and partner, was finally truly living it.